Emily glanced around the crowded dining room, a soft glow of string lights reflecting off crystal glasses, and felt a strange sense of detachment. The laughter and chatter of friends wrapped around her like a warm blanket, but she couldn't shake the quiet emptiness that clung to her heart. It was one of those evenings where everything looked perfect on the outside. The table was set with care. The scent of roasted vegetables and baked bread filled the air, and her husband David moved effortlessly among their friends, his easy smile lighting up the room. But Emily felt invisible, a shadow drifting just beyond the warmth of connection. She sipped her drink, letting the faint sparkle of the wine distract her from her thoughts. Years of routines, responsibilities, and the subtle, unspoken compromises of marriage had left her feeling quietly adrift. Emily loved her life in many ways. Her home was cozy, her friends were kind, and David was a good man, but lately she had begun to wonder if she had lost touch with herself somewhere. Along the way, the conversation at the table flowed around her like water, but she only caught fragments: laughter at a shared memory, a debate about a new movie, jokes that made others chuckle. She smiled politely, nodding at the right moments, but her mind wandered. She thought about the life she had imagined for herself in younger years, full of spontaneity, surprise, and small adventures. Somewhere along the way, those dreams had softened into routines, gentle but predictable. A sudden voice pulled her back. "Emily, are you okay? You seem a little distant." It was Michael, David's longtime friend, the kind of man who carried an easy confidence but with a warmth that made people feel at home. He had been a fixture in their lives for years, always present at gatherings, yet always unobtrusive. Emily looked at him, caught off guard by the genuine concern in his eyes. "I'm fine," she said, though her smile felt fragile. "Just a long week, I guess." Michael tilted his head slightly, as if reading something beyond the words. "I get it. Sometimes it's nice to just step outside for a bit of fresh air, isn't it?" Emily nodded, appreciating his attentiveness without fully understanding why it made her heart flutter in a way she hadn't expected. She excused herself and wandered toward the garden at the back of the house, the cool night air brushing against her cheeks. The soft hum of the city in the distance felt comforting. It's almost like a gentle whisper telling her she wasn't alone. She leaned against the railing, her gaze drifting over the twinkling lights of nearby streets. The world felt simultaneously vast and intimate, and she realized how much she longed for something she couldn't quite name: connection, understanding, or perhaps just the simple feeling of being seen for who she truly was. A soft voice behind her made her turn. "It's a beautiful night, isn't it?" Emily smiled, recognizing Michael as he stepped into the garden, his presence calm and grounding. He leaned casually against the railing, close enough to be part of the same space, but distant enough to respect her comfort. "Yes," she said softly, "it really is." They stood in silence for a few moments, the quiet of the night punctuated only by the distant rustle of leaves and the faint murmur of the party behind them. Emily felt an unexpected sense of relief. She didn't need to speak or perform. She could just exist in this moment with someone who seemed to notice her without judgment. "Sometimes," Michael began slowly, "I think we all get caught up in the noise, the routines, and we forget to notice the little things that make life meaningful. Nights like this, a quiet moment, a simple conversation, it's rare." Emily nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. His words resonated deeply, touching a part of her she had almost forgotten. The longing she had felt for months, maybe years, stirred in her chest. She realized that tonight wasn't just another dinner party. Something about this evening, this moment, felt like the beginning of a new chapter. Even if she didn't yet understand how, the wind picked up slightly, carrying the scent of jasmine from a nearby flower bed. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, letting the fragrance fill her senses. She felt a strange combination of melancholy and hope, a bittersweet acknowledgement of all she had carried alone, mixed with the quiet thrill of the unknown. As she opened her eyes, she caught Michael's gaze again, steady and kind. There was an unspoken understanding, a quiet connection that didn't need words. And in that fleeting instant, Emily felt something shift inside her, a spark of curiosity. a flicker of anticipation, and a small, thrilling sense that the night had more in store than she had ever imagined. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know how one evening could change the way she saw her life, her marriage, or herself. But deep down, she felt a gentle stirring of realization that sometimes the simplest gestures, the smallest conversations, could leave someone completely stunned in the most beautiful way. And with that thought, Emily turned back toward the house, unaware that the ride home she hadn't even considered yet would become the most memorable part of her night, perhaps the beginning of a story she would carry with her forever. As Emily followed Michael back into the soft glow of the house, her mind lingered on the quiet moments in the garden. There was something about his presence, steady, familiar, yet different tonight, that stirred memories she hadn't revisited in years. Michael had been a constant in her life for as long as she could remember. Long before she met David, he had been around, a friend of her family, a neighbor, someone who always had a warm smile and a listening ear. She remembered the afternoons of her teenage years when she'd sit on the porch, listening to him recount stories about his travels, his adventures, or even the simplest, most ordinary things. There was a way he could make even mundane moments feel meaningful. Over the years, their paths had intertwined in countless ways. He had attended birthday parties, holiday gatherings, and quiet dinners, always respectful, always kind. And though Emily had cherished his friendship, there was a subtle, unspoken boundary, one that neither of them had ever crossed. Life had its way of creating invisible lines, she realized, lines drawn by circumstance, loyalty, and timing. She thought back to the first time she had truly noticed him. It was a chilly autumn evening years ago when her car had broken down near the park. Michael had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, offering help with a grin that made her feel at ease instantly. He didn't rush, didn't make her feel inadequate. He simply stayed, helping her solve the problem, chatting casually as if nothing extraordinary had happened. She remembered the way the streetlights glimmered in his hair, the warmth of his laughter echoing through the quiet night. From that moment, she had admired him, not in a fleeting, crush way, but in a quiet, enduring way. He had a way of seeing people, truly seeing them, that left a lasting impression. Yet life moved on. She fell in love with David, built a home, and settled into the life she had always wanted, or so she thought. Michael remained a friend, but always just that. Tonight, as she glanced at him, Emily realized how deeply those old impressions lingered. There was a familiarity in his expression, a comfort in the way he listened, that reminded her of afternoons filled with laughter, evenings of shared stories, and moments where the world had felt bigger and more alive. The past wasn't just a memory. It was a connection quietly waiting to be acknowledged. Michael caught her glance and smiled softly, as if reading her thoughts. "Remember that time we tried to cook Thanksgiving dinner together?" he asked, his voice carrying a gentle nostalgia. Emily laughed softly, the memory washing over her. "How could I forget? You set the oven on the wrong temperature, and we ended up with the flattest turkey anyone has ever seen." It's chuckled. "We did our best, and somehow it tasted amazing anyway." It wasn't just the story that made Emily smile, was the reminder of how effortless their friendship had always been. How naturally they had shared space and laughter without ever needing to claim more. That sense of ease, of being fully known without expectation, was something she had rarely felt elsewhere. For a moment, Emily wondered why things had never shifted between them, why life had kept them at a comfortable distance. She realized it wasn't a lack of feeling, it was respect, loyalty, and timing. David had been her partner, her chosen companion, and Michael had been the kind of friend who respected boundaries. Yet tonight, standing in the soft light of familiarity, Emily felt a twinge of longing she couldn't quite name. She remembered the nights when she had confided in Michael about small disappointments or fleeting doubts, how he had listened patiently, offering insights without judgment. There had been comfort in those moments, a safe harbor in the storm of life's responsibilities. And now, as she spoke with him quietly in the garden earlier, she realized how much she had missed that sense of being fully understood. Michael's eyes, steady and warm, seemed to hold the same memories. There was a softness in his gaze, a subtle acknowledgement of all they had shared over the years. Emily could almost hear the silent conversation between them, the unspoken recognition of trust, loyalty, and enduring friendship. And yet, she felt that gentle ache again, the realization that life had kept them apart in ways they could not control. It wasn't regret that lingered. It was longing. Longing for connection, for understanding. For the rare moments that reminded her she was alive and capable of feeling deeply, as they settled back into the lively hum of the party. The evening had been flowing smoothly, filled with laughter and conversation. Yet Emily felt a subtle tension she couldn't quite place. She had returned to the party after her brief moment in the garden, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Michael, the way he had listened. The gentle concern in his eyes, the quiet acknowledgement of years of shared memories. It wasn't inappropriate or reckless. It was simply a recognition of connection, one that had lingered silently for years as the party began to wind down. Emily realized she had stayed later than she had intended. Guests were starting to say their goodbyes, chairs were being stacked, and the kitchen was filled with the soft clatter of dishes being cleared. She glanced at her watch and felt a small pang of worry. Her last bus had long since passed, and David was still engaged in a conversation with another friend, laughing as though time had no meaning. That was when Michael appeared beside her. He leaned casually against the doorframe, holding 2 coats in his hands. "Looks like it's just us," he said softly, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Need a ride home?" Emily hesitated, caught off guard by the offer. It was simple, practical, a gesture she might have accepted any other time, but tonight it carried a weight she couldn't explain. Perhaps it was the quiet intimacy of the night, the way the rain had started earlier and now glimmered softly against the windows. Perhaps it was the memories that seemed to hover between them, reminding her of all the times they had shared small, meaningful moments. "Yes, I guess that would be best," she replied finally, her voice steady even as her heart fluttered unexpectedly. As they stepped out into the cool night, the world felt different. The city streets shimmered under the rain, and the faint scent of wet earth mixed with distant streetlights. Michael unlocked his car, and Emily noticed how ordinary yet comforting his movements were their way. He seemed completely at ease in his own skin, calm, patient, and entirely present. Once inside the car, the silence was gentle rather than awkward. The rain continued to fall, pattering softly against the roof, creating a rhythm that seemed to echo the unspoken connection between them. Emily found herself stealing glances at Michael, noting the familiar warmth in his expression, the soft lines of his face illuminated by passing streetlights. "It's strange," Michael said after a few moments, his voice quiet, reflective. "How life sometimes brings us back to the same moments in ways we didn't expect. I feel like we've had a lifetime of conversations. Yet, tonight, something feels different." Emily nodded, her fingers resting lightly on her lap. She felt a sudden rush of emotion, a mixture of nostalgia, longing, and a gentle thrill of recognition. "I know what you mean," she whispered. "It's like being reminded of something you didn't realize you'd missed until it's right in front of you." Michael smiled, not in a teasing way, but with a softness that made her feel seen in a way few had ever managed. "Exactly. Sometimes it takes the smallest moment of conversation, a glance, even just sitting in the same car, to make you realize what really matters." The streets blurred past as they drove, yet every detail seemed magnified in her mind. The soft glow of traffic lights, the reflection of neon signs in puddles, the quiet sound of the rain on the windshield. Emily felt a sudden awareness of how much she had been longing for connection, for someone who could understand the unspoken parts of her heart without judgment or expectation. And here, in this quiet drive, it felt as though the universe had aligned to give her exactly that. She thought about the past, the laughter, the shared confidences, and the quiet support Michael had offered over the years. She realized that her admiration for him had never been about romantic desire, had always been about trust, respect, and the subtle joy of being fully understood. And yet tonight, under the shimmering lights and soft rain, those old emotions felt alive again, not as a temptation, but as a poignant reminder of what meaningful connection could feel like. Michael glanced at her briefly, catching her eye. "Emily," he said softly, "I don't think I've ever told you how much I've appreciated everything you've shared with me over the years. Your thoughts, your kindness, your honesty. It's rare." Emily felt her throat tighten, a small, unspoken emotion rising that wasn't longing in the romantic sense. It was gratitude, recognition, and an almost aching awareness of human closeness. She smiled gently, feeling tears prick at the corner of her eyes. "Thank you, Michael. That means more than you know." For the remainder of the drive, they spoke softly of small, ordinary things: the weather, mutual friends, the cityscape. They both loved it. Each word carried weight. The present had awakened something in them both, the realization that life, in its unpredictable way, could create moments of emotional clarity and connection. When the car slowed in front of Emily's home, neither of them was eager to break the spell. The world outside the car seemed ordinary once more, yet inside they both felt the quiet thrill of a shared understanding. A simple coincidence, a missed bus, a rainy night. A ride home had reignited emotions that were neither reckless nor improper, but deeply human and profoundly moving. As Emily stepped out of the car, she realized she had experienced something rare, a moment of pure emotional intimacy, untainted by expectation, full of nostalgia, and entirely safe. She looked at Michael, and without needing words, they shared a quiet acknowledgement of the bond they had always held, and the way that bond had been quietly strengthened tonight. And with that, Emily closed the car door behind her, carrying with her a sense of wonder and anticipation, understanding that the present could surprise her, could make her heart feel alive, and that sometimes the smallest gestures left the deepest impact. The night air was crisp as Emily closed her front door, the soft click echoing in the quiet street. She leaned against it for a moment, letting the gentle rhythm of her heartbeat settle, but her mind refused to calm. The drive with Michael was still vivid in her thoughts, every word, every glance. Every pause carried a weight she hadn't expected. Michael had remained outside, leaning casually against his car, waiting until she had unlocked the door. His presence had always been calming, yet tonight it was different. There had been a tension in the air, a quiet electricity, not of romance in a reckless sense, but of emotions that had been quietly simmering for years. It was the kind of moment that made someone pause and reflect on the past, on the present, and on what had never been said. "Emily." Michael's voice broke the silence, soft but deliberate. I wanted you to know that tonight. It's been good, really good. Being here, talking, riding with you, it reminds me of everything that's mattered." She looked at him, her eyes catching the faint glimmer of the streetlight on his face. "I feel the same," she admitted, her voice almost a whisper. I didn't expect tonight to feel like this." Michael nodded, his expression thoughtful. There was a pause filled with the unspoken. Both of them were acutely aware of the delicate boundaries that life had drawn between them. He was her husband's friend, a trusted presence in her life. She was committed, loyal, and devoted. And yet, in the quiet of the night, they could feel the pull of emotions that had been unexpressed for far too long, emotions not of desire, but of longing, admiration, and quiet understanding. "I think," Michael began carefully, "that sometimes people don't say things because they're afraid of changing everything, afraid that speaking what's in their hearts might be too much or too late." Emily nodded, understanding. There had been so many times she had wanted to share parts of herself with him, moments of doubt, moments of hope, small confessions of feeling alive when she was truly understood. But every time she had held back, respecting boundaries, respecting the life she had built. And yet tonight, hearing him voice the same struggle, she felt a wave of relief. They were not alone in their restraint. "I've always admired you," she said softly, her words trembling slightly. "Not in a way that would cause trouble, but in a way that makes life feel fuller, somehow. You've always made me feel seen, Michael, in ways no one else has. His eyes softened, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. Emily, I've felt the same, he admitted, his voice careful but sincere. All these years I've wanted to say things, but I never wanted to complicate your life or David's. But tonight, it's hard to ignore how much it means to be here with you. Neither of them moved closer, nor did they need to. The distance between them was respectful, but the emotional intimacy was undeniable. There was a profound connection that transcended circumstance, something deeper than attraction. Something rooted in years of trust, admiration, and quiet. Shared history. Emily looked down for a moment, a small, bittersweet smile forming. It's strange, isn't it? How life can create these moments, these connections, and yet so much remains unspoken. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if things had been different. Michael's gaze softened with understanding. I think it's part of life, he said. We treasure the moments we have, the connections we build, and sometimes we never need more. The unspoken can be as meaningful as the spoken. But tonight, it feels like we finally acknowledge it. Acknowledgement. That single word hung between them, heavy and yet freeing. Emily realized that for years she had carried this quiet admiration and respect. A feeling that was always restrained but deeply heartfelt. And now, here. The following day, Emily went about her routine with a quiet restlessness she couldn't shake. Her thoughts kept returning to the previous night, the drive. The rain, the way Michael had listened, and the small unspoken acknowledgement of the bond they shared. It wasn't romantic in a reckless sense. It was something deeper, a recognition of understanding, trust, and quiet admiration that had endured for years. She found herself walking past the window to the street outside, remembering the shimmer of the rain, the way the city lights reflected in the puddles, and Michael's gentle presence beside her. There was a tension in her chest, a longing that wasn't new but had been quietly waiting for the right moment to surface. And she realized that moment was near. That evening, David suggested going for a short drive to clear their minds after a long week. Emily agreed, hoping that a little time together would settle the swirl of emotions inside her. They drove through familiar streets, the quiet hum of the car filling the gaps in conversation. It was peaceful, but Emily's mind was elsewhere, replaying the previous night's ride with Michael as they returned home. Emily noticed Michael standing by the corner near the house, holding a package he had promised to drop off earlier. David waved politely, exchanging a few casual words, and then excused himself inside. Emily lingered, unsure why she felt compelled to remain outside. Emily, Michael said softly, turning to her with the same warmth she had remembered from the night before. I wanted to make sure this reached you. He handed her the package, but his eyes lingered, searching, as if there was something more he wanted to say. Emily took a deep breath, her fingers brushing against the paper. Thank you, Michael, for this and for last night. His gaze softened, steady and patient. Emily, I can't stop thinking about our conversation. About the drive, about everything. There's something I need to say, and I hope it won't complicate things too much. I can't keep it inside anymore. Emily felt her heart tighten, a mixture of anticipation and quiet fear. She understood that whatever he was about to say wouldn't threaten her marriage or cross boundaries they had both been careful, but it carried the weight of years of unspoken emotion. I've admired you for a long time, Michael began, his voice steady but filled with sincerity. Not in a way that's reckless or inappropriate, but in a way that makes me grateful for knowing you. You've always had this ability to make people feel seen, to make life feel lighter, and I've always wanted to tell you that it matters to me more than I can put into words. Emily's throat tightened, and she swallowed hard. She had felt the same way, silently, for years. Michael, I've always felt that too. I just never knew if it was right to say it. He nodded, relief softening the tension in his face. It's right to feel it, Emily, and it's okay to acknowledge it without it changing everything. I don't want to disrupt your life. I just wanted you to know that this connection, this understanding between us, has always meant something. And last night, it reminded me of that in a way I can't ignore. Emily felt tears prick the corner of her eyes, not sadness. Not longing in a dangerous way, but gratitude and recognition. The weight she had carried, the quiet admiration she had held for Michael, was finally mirrored in him. It wasn't about crossing boundaries or romantic recklessness. It was about acknowledging the depth of human connection and the beauty of being fully understood. "I understand," she whispered. "I've felt the same. And it's comforting more than I can describe to know that you feel it too." For a moment they stood in silence, the world around them fading. The street, the faint glow of nearby lamps. Even the distant hum of traffic, all of it seemed secondary to the quiet intensity between them. This was not a moment of impulsive decisions or fleeting desire. It was a moment of clarity, of emotional truth finally spoken aloud. Michael smiled softly, a gentle warmth in his eyes. "I don't need anything to change, Emily. I just wanted this to be honest. I wanted you to know that your presence in my life has always mattered." Emily nodded, her heart full. "And you've always mattered to me, Michael. That hasn't changed." It was a turning point, not in the sense of altering their lives, but in the sense of acknowledging the profound, unshakable bond they had always shared. Years of unspoken feelings, quiet admiration, and mutual respect had culminated in this simple, honest exchange. They had spoken their truth, and in doing so had freed themselves from the weight of the words they had held back, as Michael finally stepped back toward his car. Emily felt a sense of peace wash over her. Life had a way of presenting moments that reminded people of what truly mattered. Tonight had been one of those moments, a turning point in their understanding. A quiet affirmation that some connections were too deep to remain hidden. Emily closed the door gently behind her, leaning against it for a moment. She understood now that acknowledging truth didn't have to disrupt life, it could enrich it. Some emotions, when expressed with respect and honesty, could strengthen bonds rather than weaken them. And for Emily and Michael, tonight had been a testament to the beauty of unspoken devotion, finally brought into the light. The following morning dawned calm and bright, sunlight spilling softly through the curtains of Emily's bedroom. She woke with a lingering sense of the previous night still nestled in her chest, warmth and clarity that hadn't been there before. The drive, the rain, the quiet conversation with Michael, it had all left a mark. Not of temptation, but of understanding, of emotional honesty finally spoken. She moved quietly around the house, savoring the silence and the gentle hum of morning life. David was in the kitchen, humming softly as he prepared breakfast. His presence was comforting, familiar, a reminder of the life they had built together. Emily smiled, feeling both gratitude and contentment. Her heart had room for many feelings, she realized, without any of them threatening the life she cherished. The memory of Michael's words lingered, his gentle acknowledgement of their connection, the way he had mirrored her emotions without overstepping boundaries. Emily understood now that some bonds in life didn't need to be defined by romance or circumstance. Some connections existed simply to remind a person that they were seen, appreciated, and valued. Later that day, Emily received a small text from Michael. "Thank you for last night. It meant a lot to me, more than I can say." She paused, her fingers hovering over the screen, and then replied with a simple, "It meant a lot to me too. Thank you for being honest." The exchange was brief, yet it carried a profound weight. They didn't need lengthy conversations or grand gestures. The honesty had done its work. It had lifted the quiet burden they had both carried for years. It was a bond strengthened by respect, care, and emotional truth. As the days passed, Emily noticed a subtle shift within herself. She carried a renewed sense of gratitude and presence into her everyday life. Small things that had once been taken for granted, the laughter she shared with David, the soft chatter of friends, the quiet beauty of a morning sunrise felt more vivid, more meaningful. The acknowledgement of her connection with Michael hadn't complicated her life. It had enriched it. One afternoon, David mentioned a small gathering with friends at a nearby park. Emily felt a spark of hesitation, but she remembered the lessons of the past week. Life didn't require her to avoid feelings. It required her to honor them responsibly. She smiled and agreed. feeling a sense of anticipation for the simple joy of shared company at the gathering. Michael was there as always, calm, approachable, and steady. They exchanged a warm smile, a silent acknowledgement of the honesty shared between them. There was no tension, no expectation, just the quiet comfort of knowing that someone understood her deeply. Without words needing to be repeated, Emily spent the afternoon talking with friends, laughing and enjoying the ease of familiar relationships. But she also carried the quiet reminder that emotional truth could exist alongside commitment. That understanding could deepen without threatening life structure. It was a revelation she had never fully appreciated before. That evening, as she sat on the porch, Emily reflected on the journey of the past week. Life was filled with moments that surprised, moments that tested patience, and moments that reminded a person of what truly mattered. Her connection with Michael had been one of those moments, a subtle, powerful reminder that some feelings, when acknowledged honestly and respectfully, could coexist with a life fully lived. She thought about the unspoken gratitude, the shared understanding, and the gentle thrill of emotional intimacy. These were not fleeting passions. There were quiet truths that enriched her perception of the world. And in this understanding, Emily found peace, a sense that life was both complicated and beautiful, and that she could embrace it fully as night fell. David joined her on the porch, carrying 2 mugs of tea. He handed her one, and she smiled, feeling warmth in more ways than one. "Long day?" he asked, settling beside her. "Long but good," she replied softly, her eyes reflecting the fading glow of the sunset. "I'm realizing life is full of moments that matter, sometimes in ways we don't expect. And that's a good thing." David nodded, resting his hand lightly over hers. "I'm glad you see that." They sat in comfortable silence, sipping tea and watching the stars emerge in the sky. Emily felt a sense of gratitude, not just for her life with David, but for all the small, meaningful